Okay, so today we're going to paint a portrait. I'm going to be using very basic materials that you might already even have at home. So let's go over those supplies. Okay, so today these are the basic supplies that we'll be using. I have a mechanical pencil. You can use really any mechanical pencil, that'll do. This is a 0.5 millimeter. I like to have a variety of them as I go along. I also like to have different erasers that are these mono zero erasers. That's a mono zero. This is a little bit bigger. This is a Factus. And then I also like to have a white charcoal pencil and then an actual charcoal pencil. This is a medium and a 2B, and I do like to have a variety of softness and hardnesses as well. But yeah, I'm also using a toned paper. I really love the blue tone paper. It really just kind of depends on what sort of vibe you're going for, but there's also gray and a really nice tan toned one as well. But today I'll be using my blue toned. And one last thing I am going to be adding to my supply list, or what I'm using today, are these Soho Vine charcoal sticks, and they're about a normal size. Sometimes I like to use smaller ones, bigger ones, but this is a pretty good size for a normal portrait. I am using a 9x12 piece of paper, and the reference that I'll be using today is actually a friend of mine, Sarah. I took this photo years and years ago up in Jerome when we were having lunch at the Haunted Hamburger, I believe it was. And I just thought it was a great photo, and I recently found it. So I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna use this. I probably took it in like 2016. So what I like to do is I'll add it into Procreate, which you can get on your iPad. That way, as I'm going, I have in my gallery, I have all of the different images and reference images that I'm using. That way I can quickly go to it, because I find that I'll try to go through my photos and try to go back to where it was, or a folder, but it's kind of its own folder that I have on my iPad. It's easy accessible. So I have her in here. I'll actually go back to the photo and edit, turn it into black and white. I like to use mono, but you can use any of them. I just feel like mono still provides enough information. It doesn't blow it out too much or overexpose. What I like to do is make sure that I have my reference photo right with my image, even side by side. It just makes it easier, and you can get more accuracy that way. The same thing should be being done whenever you're drawing or painting someone from life. Have them like in view, so you're not having to like really move anything. You can keep your workflow very even and consistent. So I have her in black and white. I'll do that first. What I like about it too is I can really kind of zoom in and zoom out. It really kind of makes that better, instead of having to like step away. So I'll have that right next to this. Usually I do like to be up a little bit more on an easel, or maybe like a drawing board, but just for filming this is a little bit better. You do want to make sure that you are keeping your proportions correct, because since it's not, you know, a little more parallel to you, you could be seeing things at sort of an angle, and then once you bring it up, it can look like it has like different perspectives. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, so I am going to start off with using these fine charcoal sticks. I do like that this has this foil. I've not seen any else that have that, but these Soho ones do. That makes it kind of nice. And then using like another sheet of paper, I'll kind of create a point. That way it has a bit of an edge, and you can get out. Actually, probably shouldn't be doing that on there, but just trying to get a workable edge on here, so it's not just the cylinder. Kind of gets out any rough spots too that there sometimes is. All right, so I'm gonna start off with enveloping her. So I want to get the biggest part of her first, and so I always tend to start off with the top of the head. That way you can kind of get that placement. And if you notice, I'm holding my tool like a wand, so I have it a little bit further back I don't want to choke it because first of all, it'll get all mucky and you just don't have range of motion. You really want to be able to use your arm and really like your shoulder versus just your wrist. So you get a lot more control that way and you get a lot more movement too. And although I'm not going for inaccuracy, I'm not like super focused on details. I want to really have her find my biggest shapes, and I feel like I can slowly get to details in her likeness. And she is, so let's get her hairline. And if I really am looking, she does have a little bit of a larger, taller forehead, and which makes her unique and beautiful. So I want to make sure that I do get that in there. And so she's looking, I also want to make sure she's looking down. So I'm like kind of squinting at my reference to really get those big shapes. And just kind of creating her skull. So here's her eye sockets. And as I'm moving down, I'm seeing that I probably need to give her a little more room right here, which I feel like I always kind of tend to do. So I do like to keep that in mind when I'm having placement. So that way I can, if I know that I usually don't have enough room and I have to go down, I don't want it to be too far down because then she'll be down over here. And since this is, the light will be hitting here, this is going to be her shadowy area. I'm focusing on that too, keeping that in mind. And I don't want to be making anything perfect. So I'm moving around a lot, as you can see. I'm not really making crazy marks, but I do want there to be noise. I want there to be static. I don't want it to just be super dark. I have done drawings like that, and then when I'm done, I'm like, oh, I'm matching values. It is dark right there, but if I just make this dark and just black, then it's not going to, it just doesn't read well. You can't. An artist said, I wish I could remember her name, but I remember her saying that if it's just too dark and blocked, there's just no room to breathe. And that really spoke to me. You know, you want information. You need to tell the viewer things. So even if we know, hey, it's dark in here, we still want things to be moving and vibrating, just like atoms and molecules all are. It's kind of, I feel like the same thing. I also like to use this the willow stick. I didn't really think about it till now, but I like to use it when I want to get some softer edges. I feel like you can, with just little bits of pressure, really get nice edges that way, like a little bit more soft. And that way, like right here where her nose is, there's definitely a harder edge. So using my mechanical pencil or charcoal pencil will help with that. But these also, if you notice, they really layer in together pretty well. And as I'm looking at my image and squinting, I added too much information right here for now, or at least too much of a value shift. Now, what I do tend to do a little bit later normally, but every time I do it, I'm like, I should have done this like 10 minutes ago. So what I'm gonna do is add some white. That way I can start having better value relationship. And again, our values are anything that's anything super dark to light. So our low values are our darkest colors, and then our light values are our high key, so the white. So I'm going to go, typically the nose is the lighter area, so we'll add that, but in this case, since she's looking down, we're going to have more light up here too. But I like to start to add that in areas to give myself, again, more relationship. Otherwise, I tend to make things a little bit too dark, and I think it would be easy for anyone. You could make your values way too dark if you don't think your light's going to be there, or if you don't have anything to relate it to. I'm using a mid-tone paper, and I can't remember if I mentioned that in the beginning, but I love using that because we're already at our middle tone, so we have a lot of room to go darker and lighter, which again is why I like to put the white in a little bit sooner. Some people like to do it at the very end, and that's okay. You can do whatever you want, but the more you practice, the more you know what works for you. And I know what works for me is doing a little bit early, like having a better balance in my head. If you notice too, I'm not, you know, just scraping it in. I'm kind of trying to think about it as skin. So I'm like trying to have some noise and texture within these mark makings. Even this right here goes down a little bit more, her eyebrow. She's looking down, so. And I love that about this image. She's, you know, we're at lunch, so she's looking down and looking at the menu. I can't remember if I had her pose or not, but yeah, I really also just love this lady. So if you notice, I was just in the white, but now I'm going back to the dark, so I like to really just kind of move around. And for the most part, you know, never be afraid of erasing something you already did. It's also why it's good to start very light, because if it's too dark, you're not going to be able to have a lot of room for moving. This, I want to get a little more accurate. I feel like I tend to need to bring the face in a little bit more, so I'm doing off camera and measuring. And I know that this side is going to equal that, and then she'll have all of this over here. But I am noticing I need to bring her in just a little bit. I have such light pressure right now. Okay, so I'm grabbing my 0.3. It's even more tiny. And I like to do it just for like really small marks, just for like some detail and highlighting stuff. And honestly, the more you are making progress, the more you're adding, the more that you are going to find areas that you need to tweak. So it's like, you know, a giant puzzle. The more pieces that you're adding, the more you're going to be able to compare and see like, oh, that'll fit here, that'll fit here, this doesn't fit here. Okay, and so I am going to try to, for the most part, really keep this side lacking information, or not too much anyway. I don't want to overdo it, and I feel like sometimes I do. So I'm really trying to use this also just as like an exercise to practice what I preach. I think as humans we always try to like perfect things, and you know, it is what makes us, you know, intelligent and smart and ever changing, but we also have to know when to stop, when to put the pencil down. And that's also kind of why I like to move around a lot, because that's the best way. Otherwise, if you stay in one spot, you're just kind of rendering too much. And I'm just still comparing. I'm looking at my reference image as much as I'm looking at my drawing. And it's kind of nice filming this because then I can get a way better idea of, you know, what's going on. But if you're not filming, make sure that you are taking pictures of your progress, because that also helps seeing what's going on. It's the same thing as how I'm able to look in the camera right now. think also a big lesson of what I'm trying to convey and also practice with this is less is more. And it really applies to drawing. There's a drawing I did years ago, or just a couple years ago even, but I really loved it. I loved the image and all of that, but it just felt like something was kind of missing. And I just, looking back, it sold, otherwise I'd show you, so at least someone appreciated it. But I just felt like I overdid it. Like I could have just kept it more simple, and I feel like more simple is a lot of times just more genuine, it's more organic, and it's a little more beautiful. And right here, I'm actually just finding some more shapes that I can add different values to, just to really kind of start creating the form a little bit more. Just a little bit super focused, but that's what's going on here. Okay, and so I am also trying to keep myself in check of not making it too much like a replica, just like I was saying. Going overboard's easy, and I think that's the path to going overboard, is to just go too much and try to be making it perfect instead of making this a piece of art. Yeah, so. I also really like to do these drawings because they give me a chance to, it's a study of an image or of a moment of a person. And I really can see through the drawing process, like how much I'd like the painting process. So it's a great way to see if that's like maybe you took 10 shots and, a lot of times you can see if that was the right one or not, if it reads well in your painting or your drawing. Still want to get her, I feel like her lid is, she's looking down. I just think it's so, I love this image and this pose. A lot of times I'm just cleaning up shape. And if, looking at the reference, you can probably see that I haven't done anything to her curly hair yet. That's another thing that I like to keep very, very simple. So I want to kind of dive into that slowly as I evolve this. I'm trying to just smooth out a bit. I feel like things in the shadow should be a little bit less harsh anyway. And I can also keep layering more on here. So that way I have some soft against other textures and such, which I like to do. Okay, so maybe I'll go around, do a little bit more of the white so I'm not going too dark in my values. First I'll kind of pick out some areas that I added pencil that I know that might need white instead. And try not to mix the two too much. I feel like knowing her chin goes probably more like right here. Sarah always has these really cool earrings, so I'm glad that they're in here. I think this was on a girls only trip to Jerome. We used to go often. It's really cool. Special time. Where did that white pencil go? Going crazy? And what I'm doing right here is just called veiling, when you're just lightly going over. And so that So I haven't really used my charcoal piece yet, which I think start to kind of add. I always start with that nose. And I try to be very sparing about my the charcoal, because I use this as just as my darkest dark, and I like to just sprinkle it around, because again, if it's everywhere, it's just a lot to look at and a lot to process. So I'm going to keep my work like food, keep it nice and whole, easy to process. So I have been not drawing lately, like the past few weeks, since I had an art show, and I've just been really focusing on getting all of that on my site. I've been revamping the site. I've been adding more pieces and frames and jewelry, and also I have these earrings on right here. But so yeah, I was actually kind of nervous to draw. I was like, oh my goodness, am I out of practice? Like, how is this gonna go? And sometimes I feel like coming back after a little bit of a break makes you a little bit stronger, because you're not maybe used to some of the, frustrations that you were maybe having, or some like maybe bad habits that you might have been picking up with different things. But yeah, I just feel like coming back to a piece after a break is always a lot of fun. Okay, and I'm slowly adding a perimeter. I really like to move in and, or, you know, start in the center and move my way out. That way I'm being careful and selective about how far I'm going with the piece. But I do know that this needs something right here to show, you know, that she's not just a floating head. She's more than a floating head. I kind of measured where her neckline was in comparison to, like, you know, I would like to find a spot that would line up. This is like that, but like that. Okay, and then even though I know that her hair's curly, I'm trying to create a shape. And I'm trusting the process. Okay, so I'm pretty, you know, happy with how it is turning out. And I'll keep working on it and making, you know, some fine little tiny adjustments. I really like to, you know, work on a piece, leave a little bit, come back to it, see what you know, you can go to the restroom, come back and see that there's something that you can fix. So I'll kind of spend some time doing that, but thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next drawing video. And from here, I'm just finishing up the drawing. I actually spent a little bit more time than I thought I would, but I really enjoyed it. So I really kind of just added a lot more form. So I added more values, some more darks and some more lights, and yeah, I'm really glad that I kept it going. It was a really fun one. I hope you enjoyed. Please let me know if there's any other topics, people you'd like me to draw, any techniques, whatever. Leave a comment. Make sure that you subscribe and like. And again, I'll see you at the next one.